What are some of the hardest pills to swallow in life? I grew up thinking my parents had everything figured out. Dad worked at the auto shop, Mom managed our household bills, and somehow they always made things work. When I was little, they seemed like superheroes who could fix anything. Dad could repair any broken toy, Mom always had dinner ready, and our lights never got turned off. I never questioned where money came from or why sometimes Mom said we couldn't afford certain things. When my friends got new video games and I had to wait months, I'd get mad and throw tantrums. My parents would just shake their heads and say, maybe next time. At 24, I was still living at home, working warehouse shifts and saving up to move out. Life felt pretty stable until that Tuesday morning when Dad came home from work early. He walked through the front door with this look I'd never seen before, like someone had punched him in the stomach. Mom was folding laundry in the living room when he sat down heavily on the couch. She looked up, already sensing something was wrong. Dad just stared at the floor for a long minute before he spoke. They're closing the shop, 23 years, and they're shutting down next week. Mom dropped the shirt she was holding. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Dad put his head in his hands, and that's when I heard something that made my blood run cold. My dad was crying. Not the kind of crying you do when you're hurt or mad. This was different. Quiet, defeated sobbing that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him. Mom sat down next to him and rubbed his back, but her hands were shaking. "How are we gonna pay the mortgage?" Dad whispered. "We've got maybe 2 months saved up, but after that..." I stood frozen in the doorway, watching my parents fall apart right in front of me. Dad looked smaller somehow, like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Mom was trying to hold it together, but I could see tears running down her cheeks as she stared at the stack of bills on the coffee table. That night, I heard them talking through the thin walls. Mom was reading numbers from papers, probably bank statements and bills. Dad kept saying sorry over and over, like losing his job was somehow his fault. They talked about selling the car, maybe taking out loans, asking relatives for help. I remembered all those times I'd gotten angry when they said no to things. New sneakers, eating out, trips with friends. I used to think they were just being mean or didn't understand how important those things were to me. Now I realized they weren't saying no because they didn't care. They were saying no because they were already struggling and I was too blind to see it. The next morning, I called my supervisor and asked for every available overtime shift. I started working 60 hours a week, coming home exhausted but determined. Without telling my parents, I began taking care of things. I paid the electricity bill online using my debit card. I started buying groceries and leaving them on the counter like they'd always been there. When the water bill came, I handled that too. Then the internet, the phone, whatever I could manage without making it obvious. My parents were so stressed about the big stuff that they didn't notice the smaller bills weren't showing up anymore. 3 weeks later, Dad found the receipt for the electricity bill in my pants pocket when Mom was doing laundry. He came into my room that night holding the crumpled paper, his eyes red and tired. "Son, what is this?" I tried to play it off, but he wasn't buying it. He sat down on my bed and we just looked at each other for a minute. Finally, he patted my shoulder and said, "Thanks, son. That's all." No big speech, no dramatic moment. After he left, I closed my door and cried harder than I had since I was a kid.